Go.
Go. Hi, I'm George Martin, and it's a real honor to be here today. I want to give a shout out to Gallery 5 for supporting the arts locally. It's been since the last time I exhibited any oil paintings on State Street in Schenectady was 1998 at the Pearly Leighton Gallery. That was up the road here by Proctor's, and it's been great to kind of get back into the public eye again. I want to talk kind of about inspiration. I feel that, in order to do arts, you have to have some sort of inspiration. If you're not inspired, you'll probably, go do a million other things, watch TV, go play, whatever. So, the first time I kind of got bit by the art bug, the creative thing, I was about 3 or 4. My mom was an elementary ed teacher, and we were renting a drafty farmhouse outside of Utica as my dad worked with GE. And she sat me on the kitchen floor, put a piece of paper in front of me, and stopped me from eating the crayon, but then I started scribbling, and my mom, she just made such a big freaking deal out of it. It was like, it's like, I thought, it's like, wow, this, I just made something, and I got praise for it, and my mom got happy. So I was immediately hooked on creating stuff. A few years later, mid-60s or so, I started developing really severe earaches, and I had to lay on a heating pad for big chunks of time. I would have a little AM transistor radio to kind of listen with the other ear. And I like to think of it as like kind of the gypsies swept me away back then. It was, mid-60s, 67-ish or so, and I was listening to a lot of pop tunes at the time of, Donovan and all that craziness that was going on back then. You probably were I bet you were part of it. You were part of my problem back then. But anyway, I was just really lit up with the culture of the late 60s. And I was a teenager, so I was impressionable and stuff. But, I was watching all this stuff about Vietnam on TV, and then all these colorful people were just happy and dancing around and listening to this amazing music, and I just fell right into that, and it was my influence. I've still to this day that's where I've kind of come from. I barely made it through high school. I probably have more learning disabilities than I care to think about, and I know that I used to really have a hard time. Like I'm over it, but I used to really have a hard time staying focused and interested the things that I wasn't interested in. It's kind of like this light switch. If I'm into it, I'm obsessively compulsively into it, and if I'm not, it's like, oh well. And that's kind of the way high school was for me. I was the guy who would sit in the back row doodling and looking like I was very studious, but I was just drawing. And I did get pulled down to the principal's office for drawing my algebra teacher a caricature of Mr. Lackey having a rage attack, and the principal, he did crack a smile, so I consider it a good drawing. But I did make it through high school, and then SCC was kind enough to take my money and let me go into college there. I grew up, I'm the oldest kid. My dad's an RPI engineer, my mom's a school teacher, and I knew that if I was ever gonna, continue to go to dinner and sit at the dinner table, I needed to have a 4-year degree. So, having no clue what that was gonna be in, I signed up to SCC for business and sat there in the back row. I really remember that the tax accounting for tax or whatever I had to take, I absolutely hated that, but I really got some nice drawing time out of it. I managed to get a 2-year degree somehow, and Oswego State was the next the next organization that took me in. I moved up to Oswego, and I upped my student game. I bought the largest Strathmore drawing pad that I could stuff into my backpack. And I went and I found fell in love with Mars Stetler technical drawing pens and India ink. And that became my new take into classes. That was my new notebook. So again, I mean, I would sit there, and corporate finance didn't seem to light me up, and neither did calculus, and none of it, very few of it. So I would draw in the back of the class, and you know, I guess Oswego must be a really challenging academic place to be, because I just wasn't measuring up. And after 2.5 years of being at Oswego, you know, I was honest with myself to say, you know, this just isn't working for me. And before I take out any more student loans, I'm going to get out of here. And I bought a '68 Chevy C10 and a case of oil, and I knew that I wasn't going to come back to Schenectady, because I just could not bear the guilt, shame, disappointment of sitting across from my parents as a college dropout. So meanwhile, my little brother was like excelling at University of Michigan. So I just knew that I just wasn't going to do that. So I drove up to Burlington, Vermont, which was the hippest place that I could think I could afford to drive to on the East Coast. And I fell in love with the town, with the city. Was amazing. You know, it was back in the early 80s. They had like this amazing ice cream coming out of a garage with Ben and Jerry. They had this crazy haired socialist mayor going on up there at that time. And the music scene, the local music scene, was unbelievable. I immediately fell in with the local musicians. I didn't do music. I couldn't focus on that well enough, but I did art and drawing. So I started doing logos, t-shirt work for local bands, and I used to, you know, be roadie so that I could get the free drinks in the clubs. So I did a lot of that, and at the same time, I had gotten a job on Church Street at an Army Navy store doing the signage for the store. I got a lot of pats on the back for that. And between that and working with local band people, and I continued to work with my Mars Stetler pens, getting the ink to come out, but I'd gone to Bristol board, and I found that, you know, looking at that wet ink on the paper and then watching it kind of soak in and just like stay there. It was just so, I just fell in love with that. It was like, I guess I was a little obsessively compulsive with it, maybe, I don't know, but I found after a while that my legendary Saturday hangovers got me fired from the Army Navy store, and I started into painting houses with a ragtag bunch of misfits, and I really loved house painting. And I can remember doing this one row house. It was a restoration, and I got hired on with these couple guys, and they were doing a 7-color oil trim package on these row houses down by Lake Champlain Shore, historic renovation. And so I'd be on scaffolding all day in the sun, listening to whatever was people were playing. There was a little bit of marijuana smoking back then. It was not legal, so I'm not condoning it. But I fell in love with house painting. What did I do? Oh, I was sitting on my porch. Key moment. I almost forgot the most key moment in my entire life of an artist. But in 1982, I was sitting on my porch, and I just flipped over an album. I'd been working on a pen and ink drawing out on my front porch. Nice sunny June day, and flipped over the album, took a hit off the bong, went outside, sat down, looked at this drawing, and I went, wow, I really like this. This is good. You know, this is what I'm going to do. I'd gone up there, a college dropout, because I didn't know what they had there that I wanted, but I kind of discovered in Oswego Burlington, that I was an artist, and here's the proof, right? So I immediately enrolled myself in the Academy of Starving Artists, of which I've been a proud student up to now, and I'm going to skip over an awful lot. I got kind of intervened on by a controlling, dominating father, and got brought back to Schenectady, which there was a lot of friction there, a lot of battles, and I continued to do art through those periods. I'd gotten into working in construction, because I could work with my hands, I could focus on what I was doing, people left me alone, I could wear whatever I wanted, I could get dirty, which I love doing that, and you know, but I graduated kind of from pen and inks to painting on found material, construction sites, you know, plywood, wood, demolition material, anything I could find, I would drag back to the house and start doing oil paintings on them. At the time, I wasn't really having great communication with my family, and I used my artwork was where I could express the thoughts that I had in my mind, kind of the visions I had of the world, and needless to say, they were rather bizarre. It was in the 90s though that, you know, Pearlie seemed to like a few of them, and I exhibited at Ambitions and Mother's Cafe and someplace over in Ulsan, Albany. I had Union Street had a cafe up there by the college. I had a solo show there. But, you know, my work was really weird. I still have all of it if anybody ever wants to see it. It lives in my house. But I decided at that point that I was tired of just kind of having people just look at this stuff and go, wow, ooh, wow, that's weird. So I started building rustic furniture, and I did that for a whole bunch of years because now I could accentuate the beauty of just a stick, just a piece of pine, and I could take that and just let nature be the, you know, I don't know. It was just easier to find people smiling at my work when I built rustic furniture. That went into wood carving, which I currently have been doing for about 15 or so years. But let me see. Like I said, I'm not going to get into a lot of the details of all the horrors because there was a lot of good that happened in there too. But the point is just the inspiration. I've never lost my inspiration to try to pull what's inside of me and put it out onto a piece of artwork. Currently, in 2026, I have been, well, I stopped working in my paint cave with oil painting for about almost 20 years, and since the 90s I kind of stopped, and I opened up my paint studio again about a little over a year ago, and I've been using I don't know, canvas is a lot lighter than chunks of rock and stuff like that, so I've been using canvas, and I've been doing oil paintings, and I've always, again, I mean, I'm influenced from the bright colors of the you know, late 60s and psychedelia and all that, so, you know, bright colors. I go between my two studios, the wood carving studio where I do abstract wood sculptures, and my paint cave. And I've also recently, as I've been recovering from eye surgery, I've been going back to pen and ink because I'm supposed to look down. And if I do this, I can look down for hours. Mm-hmm. So I've been kind of going back to my pen and ink roots also. But in 2026, I started, I've kind of always been kind of just inspired by, you know, whatever's in here. I'm self-taught. I'm basically a pretty solitary person, and I guess I've had a good amount of feeling that I'm not alone in my journey. So I let whatever's in there, if it wants to come out, I'm not too judgmental. I just let it happen. And you know, I'm not paying a mortgage with my artwork, so it doesn't owe me anything. But I recently started to study kind of the age of a Pisces coming to an end, not to get all crazy cosmic, but the coming of the age of Aquarius and how there's a cosmic shift in energy that is coming at us, and it was kind of picked up, that's what I picked up on in the 60s, was this spiritual energy stuff is what kind of grabbed a hold of me as you're laying, you know, with an earache and just praying to God for the pain to stop, and listening to Atlantis by, you know, Donovan or whatever. So I've been focusing on women because I noticed that most of my work over all these decades has oftentimes had a male-ish face to it. And, you know, no surprise, we tend to paint ourselves over and over and over again, or we don't. But I decided that I was going to start focusing on women because I believe, you know, our world, our culture, our country, we're not going to get into any of that, but I think, you know, we're in hard times, and I feel that our world needs a lot of healing. And if you go right back to Mother Earth and you start to kind of cue in on this whole dynamic that women make great decisions, they're 50% of all of us here, and if only maybe they started having some more input into where we're going, maybe the next 2,000 years will look a little brighter. So that's my influence of, these are two, Mary, and this was supposed to be Mary 2, and as I was painting the name, I usually title my oil paintings. As I was going to paint Mary 2.20 or whatever on this one, I don't even know why Lucy came out. So I looked it up, and Lucy stands as like Latin for light, and I thought, wow, okay, yeah, okay, Lucy, welcome, and I don't know, there's about 3 or 4 more other women portraits that I've been doing since then, so that's all I got. Any questions?
Yeah, really, just preach it. I'm just loving it. Everything you said is so beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
So the top there, tell us about that.
That's Tornado. I've always kind of enjoyed making up my own words too. And that represents kind of our society where we're going off into different directions of like, red, polarization, and just kind of the spinning like inside a washing machine of our society these days. And my hope is that with like this painting, that cooler minds will prevail, kind of the purples and the blues. But that's what it's about. It's about the society and people being torn apart.
It sort of has a feeling of keep pairing about it. Sort of sort of go in every direction.
The balance and flow are like I try not to think of too much when I'm working, but especially in my sculpture shop, I try to just think balance and flow. I don't really care what it turns out to look like, but let's just have balance and flow here, please, right?
Do you typically be inspired by real people when you're doing your portraits?
Not so much.
Not so much?
No. I colors sometimes grab me, like I'll see a color combination together and sometimes I'll pull that into a painting, but individually, no.
Oh, okay.
No. I've never been able to do realism, so it's like, I don't even want to try to make somebody look like somebody.
So do you sketch first, or do you just go right into the canvas and
I do
let it
both.
happen from there?
I do both,
You like to draw.
I do like to draw, and I've done both. And back in the 90s era, I used to, the paintings were way more elaborate back then, and I used to kind of sketch things out so it would be more like a coloring book by the time I got to it with paint. But I've been really influenced with sloppy abstract paintings, and I'm wired way too tight, I think, to really get there. But part of me really wants to be more free with my paint. So I've been trying to use less structure, pre-thought out structure, and just kind of let it go.
How can you let it go? How do you do that?
How do I do that?
Because you said that
Well, I've been sober for 32 years, so I can't do drugs anymore. But I just kind of stand there in front of the work, and I like to listen to music when I paint, and I guess I'm not afraid to make a mistake. I think we can all relate to that terror of standing in front of a blank thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, actually, this portrait that I'm working on right now, it's like, all right, I got to put some base lines in here just to pin down where the face is. I put down a few base lines, and I was like, oh wow, this is beautiful. It's like I was so afraid to screw it up. I didn't touch that painting again for like 2 weeks, But then I was like, you know what? It's just a painting. Don't worry about it. And I got back into it. So, I try not to overthink stuff.
Wow.
Very tolerant of me.
Yeah. That's a great talk. I liked, especially when you said, when you're getting into, working with rustic furniture. You know, I could, you know, like make something beautiful out of a, you know, stick. I love that. That's great.
It's, I mean, sometimes, you know, art is you know, there's such a wide variety of what's exhibited and done out there, and I think one of the things that I queued up on as a kid was that, you know, like, you know, rock and roll does not have to be orchestra. You know, it can be raw, it can be rough, and then, you know, and then enter the punk scene, and, you know, we all know what that did to our world.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.